Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. So we've recently done videos about all the lightsaber forms and when to use them. We've covered famous dueling pairs in Star Wars history, and we've even looked at the famous arrest attempt of Chancellor Palpatine. But the one thing we haven't really talked about when it comes to lightsaber combat is how many lightsabers should you hold in your hands? And so today, we're going to be looking at the advantages of dual wielding versus single wielding lightsabers. But first, guys, a word from our sponsors, Loot Crate. They sent me over a box of goodies. Let's see what's inside this thing. Okay, and then first we have a scale model of Battlestar Galactica Cylon Raider. Very nice. It comes with a little small display case. I like that little stand you can put it on. Okay, next up, we got a little Firefly figurine. I can't believe people do this as a living. Like, they just open up boxes. This is my favorite thing. These are apparently eggs from aliens, and I love how they included expired June 3rd, 2122. Obviously, you're not supposed to eat these, although I imagine putting these in the refrigerator could be kind of interesting. Let's see what's inside. Oh, that is terrifying. Look at these things. Everyone's worst nightmares. Don't want no face huggers coming out. We got something from AVP. We have a little Predator here. Very cool. A little vinyl figure. And then we have this, which is from Alien. It's an alien walking a little face hugger like it's a dog. Oh, that's kind of cute. Ah, and see, look, it's even, I like the detail here. Stop! I know it doesn't look like I'm having fun, but I am having fun right now, but connect all this. All right, very cool. Look at that. It's got even a little acid puke on the fire hydrant. Or maybe it's acid pee. Ooh, a mission log from Lost in Space. Cool, if you're into that. Ooh, a Futurama beer cozy. Oh, there's two for you and your missus, or best friend. And lastly, another Futurama figurine. Is this Fry? Let's see. I gotta say, a lot of this packaging does look like food. It's not food. It's toys, so don't eat any of this. And then we got a little Morbo from Futurama, and he's got vein cream. Very nice. Very, very nice. Now, the Loot Crate that I got was more generic sci-fi, so it has a bunch of different franchises kind of lumped in together. There are all sorts of different Loot Crates that you can choose from that feature all the coolest licensed toys and goodies from your favorite franchise. Or maybe you could get something for your dad. Father's Day is coming right up. And for all you GT viewers out there, we do have a 15% discount for you guys, which is 15% more awesome than not having discount. Just hit that link down below in the description. All right, thank you for your patience. Before the Jedi became all snobby and only embraced one side of the Force, they used to live in harmony with both the dark and light side. They also didn't have lightsabers back then. They didn't even have vibroblades. Instead, they used Force-imbued blades, which were essentially swords made from some kind of metal material and then given a buff through the Force. It's all very fantasy RPG-ish-ly, if you ask me. The important thing is that lightsaber combat did first evolve from sword fighting. As a matter of fact, the first lightsaber form, Form 1, was Suicho, which was developed during the transition from metallic swords to the first battery-powered sabers. The Sith hadn't even broken off from the Jedi at this point, so a lot of this combat training was theoretical and based off of traditional sword fighting. Now, there are several reasons why an individual would want to dual wield while using swords. First, from a more traditional standpoint, generally melee fighters will use their weak hand for shielding themselves and their strong hand for striking. All throughout human history, military leaders have equipped cheap levy forces or peasants with a combination of shields and sword or spear. The shield has always been one of the best tools in keeping your cheap infantry alive, and it usually is a lot less expensive than giving them proper armor or training. Now, as we mentioned in previous videos, Jedi have this precognition ability that allows them to sense incoming threats. Therefore, their defense is usually quite precise and accurate. A shield might be good for a less skilled fighter, but most are quite bulky and unwieldy. A Jedi would rarely use a shield for that reason, and they're so precise in their ability to perceive incoming blows that they could just use a sword to deflect something as narrow as a blaster. And so oftentimes the weak hand in a dual wielding situation will be presented towards the enemy and serve as kind of a parrying or blocking tool. Now, obviously, a more talented Sith or Jedi Force user will be able to use their second hand for more than just parrying and defensive uses. They'll also incorporate it into their striking technique. Now, in Star Wars, the act of dual wielding is called Jar-Kai, named after the city where Yovashin swordsmen first developed special sabers for a new dual wielding combat form. And so just like here on Earth, these early adopters of dual-wielding swords would use their weak hand for defense and their strong hand for offensive striking. But as the form developed, special maneuvers were created to take advantage of that second blade's offensive capability. The Rising Whirlwind maneuver has the duelist spinning both blades, creating a whirlwind of deadly attacks. This was actually taken to the next level by General Grievous, who actually had a second set of arms. As you can see, this method can be extremely confusing and intimidating, and immediately puts even the most experienced Jedi on the defensive. Then there's the Twin Strike, which is a double overhead swing with both blades, which can be quite deadly and powerful, especially when paired with a Force jump. While there were very few Jedi or Sith that specialized in the dual-wielding form, most Jedi had at least a basic understanding of the form and would utilize it in certain situations if they felt like they were overmatched. These weekend Jar-Kai fighters would usually pick up a fallen Force user's saber and try to incorporate it in a clumsy defense. Sort of like what Anakin Skywalker does during the Battle of Geonosis, and that of course doesn't turn out well. Now, one of the problems with using a normal blade not designed for dual wielding in your offhand is just how lengthy that blade can be. It's one thing to swing a lightsaber with your dominant hand, but your weaker hand oftentimes does not possess the same strength, control, or dexterity. Asajj Ventress used a pair of curved dueling sabers, which were kind of similar to Count Dooku's own lightsaber. Curved lightsaber hilts were difficult to build because of an alignment issue you usually would have with the kyber crystals. The curve also forced the user to hold the blade differently. There's much more contact on the palms rather than the fingertips. This gives the user more control and allows them to switch the angle of attack in a way that a straight blade could never do. Combined with the precise and deadly Mikasi dueling form, it's no wonder individuals like Count Dooku schooled Obi-Wan and Anakin. They probably have never fought against such a blade with this type of hilt. The curved hilt also gave the user much more leverage, which made their strikes more powerful. It's for this reason Asajj Ventress loved using the twin strikes method. But if you take a look at Ahsoka Tano in this scene, in her offhand she uses a shorter saber known as the Shoto. Shoto means short blade in Japanese, and it kind of falls right in between a katana and a small dagger. It's very useful because it combines speed and quickness and maneuverability with a pretty decent reach. For someone tiny like Yoda, a Shoto blade can even be their main sword. But for Ahsoka Tano, who is more normal size, it serves as a terrific offhand weapon. Generally, the Shoto is used for disturbing enemy attacks either through short quick strikes or parries. The idea is to throw your opponent off balance with that smaller, quicker blade and then bring in that full-size blade for the killing blow. The result is a very furious, vicious, and unrelenting attack strategy. Back during the Old Republic era, Shoto was actually used to counter light whips, which could easily wrap around a longer blade and take it out of commission. Some Old Republic warriors would even enter combat with two Shotos and then use the more acrobatic form for a Taru combat form, which allows them to kind of make up for the Shoto's shorter range because they're basically jumping all around the battlefield. The Shoto is also specially designed to be thrown, which adds another dimension to this very, very important and versatile secondary weapon. Now, if the Sith and the Jedi had access to precognition and the majority of them had superior athletic ability, why didn't more individuals dual wield? It's very clear that an extra blade for striking and blocking gives you an advantage, and that's why so many Jedi and Sith end up picking up extra blades off the battlefield. Well, for one, even if you are a Jedi or a Sith, you still have to be exceptionally talented to dual wield. This is why we never really see mediocre practitioners of Jar-Kai. They just don't last that long. Asajj Ventress' Mikasi was only second to Count Dooku's, and Ahsoka Tano was far more advanced than most Jedi her age. She also survived Order 66. While the Jedi did have superpowers that enhanced certain parts of their lives, they were still normal beings who could bleed and die. And not everyone had the coordination to be able to dual wield. I mean, for this same reason, very few warriors in our human history have adopted this melee fighting technique. And dual wielding is even more frowned upon when it comes to firearms. No, seriously, try dual wielding at your local fire range. Actually, don't do that. You'll probably get kicked out. But the point is, humans are really not designed to dual wield. We can only really focus on one hand and one arm and one action at a time. The way Jedi trained most techniques was through a base set of stances and strikes that would serve as a foundation for more complicated moves within that form. It was incredibly important to keep your entire body from your feet to your head in perfect rhythm. And remember, lightsabers don't have any weight in the actual blade area. The pommels are kind of heavy, but it still does not allow you to really understand where that blade is. This is why usually only Force users use lightsabers, and adding a second lightsaber just overcomplicates the entire situation. Also, many lightsaber forms utilize two-handed techniques, parries, and strikes, which gave the user more control and more power. That was one of the bigger problems with Jar Kai. The individual strikes weren't really powerful enough to stagger enemy fighters. And while Jar Kai was extremely powerful when combined with Form 3 defensive shell techniques, a really skilled duelist could isolate your individual lightsabers and start attacking your hands and try to disarm you. This is basically how Obi-Wan Kenobi was able to defeat General Grievous. Instead of just swinging for his body, Obi-Wan locked up individual limbs and then chopped them off. He was able to do this because two hands holding onto a sword will always be more powerful than one hand. Of course, you could just do different variations of the twin strike move, but in different directions, but that kind of defeats the whole purpose of having two blades, which is to be creative and use different attack angles with each hand in order to outflank your enemy's defenses. So most Jedi preferred the power, control, and kind of stability one got with two hands on the lightsaber. And most of the time, especially during the peaceful era between the Clone Wars, the lightsaber was an important symbol of the Jedi Order, and there was something very noble and romantic about the knight with this single sword. You see, the Jedi were supposed to be the protectors of the entire Republic, and for some reason, when you have someone dual wielding, they look a lot more menacing. The types of techniques involved in dual wielding also usually drew heavily from the Force and were considered more dangerous and dark side prone forms of combat. And of course, there was Exar Kun, the famous Dark Jedi, who really gave a bad name to the form as well. So there you have it, guys. As you can see, certain individuals have what it takes to be a dual wielder, and most of us probably should just avoid it. Coordination is not something that can be taught, unfortunately. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. And as usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.